Yes, Mr. King.
I ask to be recognized for 60 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize for the delay in getting down here to answer the call of the gavel. There are some distractions taking place around America as we speak. And a lot of America has been transfixed by what has happened this year. And I can go back and recap some of the events, but we pretty well know what they are. $700 billion in TARP spending. We watched 3 large investment banks be nationalized by the federal government. We watched AIG be nationalized, taken over by the federal government. We watched Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac be taken over by the federal government, and then by an executive order right before Christmas, have them open up the debt ceiling on Fannie and Freddie to where every American is the guarantor of the debt, which could be as many as $5.5 trillion in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We watched negotiations take place behind the scenes that told the bankruptcy court how to push our automakers through there, and both of them nationalized, taken over by the federal government. And then we watched the $787 billion economic stimulus plan be passed in an urgency that hasn't produced a product and a result except a debt that's going to drag down this economy for the American people. And then, behind that, out of this House came hurry up and rush, cap and trade, cap and tax, pass it. And it passed out of the House, and it went over there on the docket of the Senate. And the American people began to realize what was happening. They couldn't first believe it. They didn't think first the $700 billion TARP was really real. Somehow they trusted that we knew what we were doing here as a majority. The majority knew what they were doing. And so they sat back, and something else happened, and something else happened. That's the list that I've given you, Mr. Speaker. The American people have risen up. And in the month of August, they filled up town hall meetings all across America, over and over again. Hundreds and thousands of people came out so that their voice could be heard. Some of them stayed up all night long just to craft their question and do the research so that if they got a chance to even ask a member a question, you could tell there's a tremendous amount of American intensity going on all across America. And into September, and after Labor Day, we came back here, and the grind began. The effort to pass a National Health Care Act began. Socialized medicine effort wound up again. And they began pushing this through, Mr. Speaker. And Speaker Pelosi's agenda and Harry Reid's agenda and President Obama's agenda. The idea of nationalizing proud private sector companies and taking over 1/3 of the private sector profits and doing so in a little more than a year in the United States. And then taxing all of our energy and putting restrictions on America's economy, where the result is to send jobs to India and jobs to China. The American people watched that and they thought, well, surely these people know what they're doing. But the more mistakes they saw, and the list of misguided liberal ideas that had been passed out of the House and sent to the Senate, and some passed out of the Senate, was stacking up higher and higher and higher, Mr. Speaker. And the American people, in groups, incrementally, began to realize they knew better than the people that were in charge in Congress. And they lost their trust and their faith in the good judgment of the people that they elected in this constitutional republic, especially when they saw that there was a determination on the part of the President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, and the Majority Leader of the United States Senate to nationalize our bodies, to take over the management and the control of the most personal and private thing we have. That's this thing inside our skin, our bodies. And the federal government deciding what we were going to have for insurance and who was going to pay for it and what the premiums would be and what kind of mandates would be on it and what the coverage would be and the decisions that we would have. And then on top of that, an effort to start to tax, let's say, trans fats or foods that they think we shouldn't eat, or sin taxes, so that they could manage our lives, regulate everything that we do, nationalize and take over the control of our very private bodies, and then tell us what we can eat and probably when we can sleep. It's way, way too much government intrusion on a proud and independent people. And so when we look across America, we looked around for from whence cometh our help. Well, we got help all over America. The Tea Party patriots came up all over America, and they had huge rallies. And they came to this Capitol on 9/12, and they filled the city up with people with American flags and yellow don't tread on me flags, and they cried out for relief from the overspending that's been taking place. And they held up their constitutions, and tears went down the cheeks of men and women that love this country. And it happened all over in every state. And it really packed people in here in Washington, D.C. And still their hearts were hardened, and still they were determined to force socialized medicine down the throats of the American people. And then more people came to this Capitol. And as it came closer to a vote on health care here in the House of Representatives, a call went out one day, and 3.5 days later, someplace between 10 and 50,000 Americans showed up here in the United States Capitol so their voices could be heard. And they filled up over here on the west side of the Capitol and packed people out there with their American flags and their yellow don't tread on me flags. And they cried out for relief from this oppressive government that was taking their liberties away and my liberties away. And still their hearts were hardened, Mr. Speaker. And 2 days later, we called people back to town. And over here on this side of the Capitol, thousands came again. And again, they pleaded with the legislature and the Congress here, give us some relief. We just want fiscal responsibility. We want our liberties. They told us we're not Europeans, we're Americans. We're a different people. We didn't come here for dependency. We live in this country because we want to live. A lot of people came here to the New Hampshire motto, live free or die in the United States of America. Have a chance to succeed, take the risk of failure, take your own personal responsibilities, and all of that they asked for was a chance to succeed, taken away by a President of the United States, a Speaker of the House, and a Majority Leader in the United States Senate. 3 people. The American people began to understand that when it got to be the House bill passed here by a vote of 220 to 215, if 3 people change their mind, that bill goes down in defeat on the House floor. And the rest of this saga doesn't happen, Mr. Speaker. But it went over to the Senate, where they ground it out and churned it out and cut deals in back rooms. They're no longer smoke-filled rooms, I don't think. At least they're not on the House side, because by order of the Speaker, that's another freedom that you lost. And if you want to eat an omelet over here in the cafeteria, it shall be made out of the eggs of a free-range hen. Don't forget that, Mr. Speaker. That's another liberty that we've lost. And so the health care bill went to the Senate, and they cut deals. And we heard things like Louisiana Purchase 2. How do you buy off the senator in Louisiana? And then we heard things like the Florida purchase of the senator down there so they could be exempted from losing their Medicare Advantage. Then we saw the Cornhusker kickback, that other Senator Nelson. I can say the names now. We changed the rule. Why? Because he lost the amendment, which was the pro-life amendment, the Stupak amendment in the Senate by a vote of 45 to 54. So crafted some new language that would still leave the United States government in the business of brokering abortions through mandated health insurance premiums. And got a special exemption for Medicaid increases in Nebraska, the Cornhusker kickback. And the American people saw this with revulsion. And still they came forward and produced 60 votes to end the filibuster in the Senate on Christmas Eve, Mr. Speaker, on Christmas Eve. And about that time, I had a conversation with my senior senator in Iowa, Senator Chuck Grassley, who's engaged in this debate in a serious way with a full intention of trying to find the best policy that could be put together in the legislative body. But he had to walk away from it at a point because they didn't need his vote. They were going to go for the most liberal, the most left-wing, the most leaning into socialism policy that they could pass, and it wasn't going to be with Republican votes. And so that's what they did. And they put the votes together to end the filibuster, and the deal was made on the 23rd of December, and the vote for the end of the filibuster came up in the morning of the 24th, Christmas Eve morning. And I talked to my senior senator, and I said, what can we do now, Senator? How do we kill this bill? And he said, we have to pray, and we have to pray for a victory in Massachusetts and the special election in the United States Senate, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, that didn't seem very plausible at the time. And I started to take a look at this and follow the senator's advice. put a little work in up there myself and just came back from Massachusetts just a few hours ago. And a few minutes ago, they've announced that Martha Coakley has conceded to Scott Brown. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you there was a shot heard around the world up there in Lexington 200-plus years ago. There's another shot heard around the world tonight. In fact, it's the Scott heard around the world tonight. And it's the American people rejecting socialized medicine. It's the American people rejecting overspending and fiscal irresponsibility and living for the now and passing out the government dole and making sure that nobody has to worry about anything except how their children and grandchildren are going to pay this massive debt that's been created in the trillions of dollars. And voting here on the floor to increase the national debt by smaller increments, $300 billion, and next time it'll be a big old chunk. And there's no restraint whatsoever in spending. The blue dogs are more groundhogs. They've gone underground, Mr. Speaker. They used to come down here and harangue Republicans about spending too much money because we'd have a little deficit at the end of the year. Now, I've always been for a balanced budget, and I'll vote to balance it every time I get the chance. But blue dogs demagogued Republicans for a long time. And now they're groundhogs because they went out and saw their shadow and they went underground because the people on their side of the aisle are spending money irresponsibly like crazy. How could you possibly spend enough money and take away enough liberty that the 3.5 to 1 Democrats to Republicans in Massachusetts that elect a Republican to come down to the United States Senate and vote against cloture so that the Harry Reid bill could be killed in the Senate? How could you ever spend that much money? I didn't believe it was possible, Mr. Speaker. But some would say a miracle has taken place tonight, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I believe there has been intervention, and I'm grateful for it. And it's what I asked for. It's what I worked for, and I spent 3 days up there and experienced a lot of good people in Massachusetts. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to say into the record that, working with the very liberal agenda of the Massachusetts delegation doesn't always give a person the most positive attitude about the people they represent. And I come from Iowa, where we have the privilege of making a recommendation to America on who would be the next president of who should be, we think, the next president of the United States. We take it seriously, and we have a lot to say about it, and we're grateful for that privilege and that honor. But it's only a recommendation, Mr. Speaker. Tonight, today and tonight, the people of Massachusetts not only made a recommendation, they made a decision, not just for the people in Massachusetts, they made a decision for the United States of America. And that decision is no socialized medicine in this country. Keep our liberty. Get the budget under control. Let people take care of themselves and each other. The government is not a nanny. That's the message that comes from the place where liberty began. Yesterday I was standing at Plymouth Rock 390 years ago. The Pilgrims landed there. And here we are 390 years later. Massachusetts, of all improbable places, has brought us back to that rock of liberty. And I could not be happier tonight. This is all that I could ask for, and I'm looking forward now to the battle we have ahead to preserve the liberty that we have left and restore some of that we've lost. I'd be so happy to yield from the very nice and gentle lady from Wyoming so much time.